Simply as data science has grown over the past 10, 15 years, the demand has gone up. When I started out, I was the only data scientist, and then I started leading small teams and then growing out over the course in time. There's always the need on top of that for more talent and retaining that talent. That's because that's what drives everything. The data science team is really the people who are telling the computers or teaching the computers how to think. Without good people on your team, you're never going to get results out.
Welcome to the Tech Show. I'm Aziza. I'm here today with Focus GTS, and Focus GTS is a niche IT staffing and recruiting firm focusing on 4 areas of technology: data science and artificial intelligence, digital marketing technology, BI and analytics, and cloud technology. We partner with you to bring in-demand tech talent to your organization and fill those hard-to-fill roles. Today we're here with Andrew, and Andrew is a VP of Data Science at Egon Zender. He's a leading data scientist specializing in artificial intelligence and machine learning of data-centric projects and teams for over 10 years. Welcome, Andrew, and thank you for joining us here at the Tech Show.
Hi, thank you.
In this episode, we want to discuss building your data science team. Where do you start and what to look for? But before we dive right into it, I have to ask you, Andrew, PC or Mac?
PC. I used to dive into Linux a lot in the early days and do a lot of my own building. I am very much a open ecosystem type of person.
That's awesome. Amazing. So let's talk about data science skill set. Unfortunately, the term data scientist expanded and became too vague in the recent years. You being as an early member on the market, which skills are really necessary and which aren't, including soft skills and technical skills and so forth?
So it's not an easy answer because there are a lot of different types of data scientists out there. There's the person who there's the data scientist that comes to mind, or the algorithms person who delves in. But there are also other people, the sort of the data wranglers, who will take 20 or 30 different data sources and put them all together in one view. And there are assortment of other pieces. And I find that the best data scientists have a piece of all of these together. So it's not as easy to say these are the essential skills or these are the non-essential skills, because it goes into building your team. Do you need somebody who will help pull out the data? Do you need somebody who's algorithmically based? Or do you need somebody to understand and define metrics for the rest of the firm, which are not as simple as you might find in dashboarding? But all of that being said, there's one thing that everybody has to have, and that has to be the ability to communicate. We are data scientists or storytellers. We tell stories with data, and if you can't communicate those stories out and have people see why there's value in the work that you're doing, it's never going to be implemented. So what's the use?
Yeah, definitely. So when it comes to building your team, where do you start? How do you build an effective data science team that can produce? And do you start, I guess, from the top down or from the bottom up? Like, how does it work, the whole thing?
It varies, because very frequently when I step into a role, I'm very much a 0 to 90 person. I'll either get a small team of a handful up to maybe a dozen people, or be the very first person to say, can you build this out? And depending upon the situation is where I go. If you have a team already in place, you have to evaluate where their strengths and weaknesses are, where they need help, and then build off of that. They could be top heavy, they could be bottom heavy. Hopefully it's a nice distribution, but you never know. When I'm starting to build out a team on my own, I actually start in the middle. It sounds sort of odd, but for the first 2, maybe 3 hires, I'm looking for people with at least 4 or 5 years under their belts, so that I can hand them a project and say, go, and it just works. They can do the work on their own. They can use me as a resource for various pieces. I can continue to develop the story within house, as well as continue to hire and help them along. But if we start at the bottom, I spend all my time guiding and mentoring people. And if I do have everybody at the top, there aren't as many people actually getting the work out there. How the team then rolls out is really what comes across your door.
Yeah, that's really interesting. We speak to a lot of people, and I've heard that many leaders actually have different strategies when it comes to that, and they all have their own thing to say. Some say you have to start from the bottom up. Others say you have to, especially startups, have to hire somebody that's up top and then have them build out the rest of the infrastructure of the team. So, you being the VP and being in the industry for 10 years, what has been your biggest challenge when it comes to building a data science team?
So I guess it still has to be sourcing. Simply as data science has grown over the past 10, 15 years, the demand has gone up. When I started out, I was the only data scientist, and then I started leading small teams and then growing out over the course and time. There's always the need on top of that for more talent and retaining that talent. That's because that's what drives everything. The data science team is really the people who are telling the computers or teaching the computers how to think. Without good people on your team, you're never going to get results out.
I definitely agree with that. Sourcing is definitely, I think, the hardest part as being in the recruitment as well. There's a lot of people with a data science title on their resume and their profiles and so forth. So it definitely is getting saturated as far as like the titles go, right? So how do you deal with those issues that you mentioned previously, like engagement and retention? How do you keep your data science team engaged?
It's a bit easier for me as I'm a practitioner and I still keep my hands somewhat dirty. I still do code reviews. I still work with my team at the whiteboard suggesting approaches. And it builds confidence in the team that when I represent them at the highest levels, that they have somebody who knows what they're talking about. So that I find helps me a lot. As for the retention, that's always hard. You need to be able to build a group and a dynamic where people are happy where they're doing things. A data scientist can always sit one place another year, 2 years later, run off and get another $50,000+. And that's going to happen the first couple of years. When you go from that 80,000 to 130, 130 to 200, 2 or 3 years and out is going to be the way it is. But it's really creating a team dynamic and having people work on interesting problems that really drives the data scientists. I find most of them are curious people. They join a place because they're interested in the problems presented and the team dynamic that they see, where they believe in the vision. And so as you're selling that vision, you have to make sure that that continues on through. If that team becomes stymied by somebody or that dynamic changes, that's when you see the real turnover happening.
That's interesting to hear because that's something I've also heard from a lot of our recruiters is that at some point data scientists, especially the ones that have been kind of seasoned and been in the field for a while, they tend to look for something that's challenging and interesting now, right? So they're looking for more than money, more than just compensation. And I guess like from our conversation, the initial challenge besides overall scarcity, how do you address kind of getting them interested, right? How do you sell that? Not every company is Amazon and Facebook and Netflix and so forth. So I guess how do you sell that vision?
When you're at a startup or even a mid-sized company, there is a real target that you're aiming for, an area that you're specific in. When you're talking your Amazons or your Facebooks, they're so large that they cover a wide range of pieces or a wide range of verticals. So having people apply who are truly interested in the area that you're looking in makes it so much easier. So I was one of the founders of Yumly. It's a recipe search engine. And every data scientist, pretty much everybody we hired onto that company was a foodie at some level, whether they just enjoyed food to the point of cooking it and trying to improve upon their techniques in one way or the other. It was a real cohesive piece in that we were centered around food and those sorts of things. If you can drive that within your group, that people believe in what they're doing.
Culture is, I guess, number one. It's always all about the culture, and people love food. What can I say? My next question would be what we've run into is that data scientists are very, very extremely smart people. And it's hard to kind of find both, right? Somebody who is smart and good at building models, and then somebody who can communicate that data into simple English to explain to the stakeholders and higher ups. So how do you do that?
It's a taught skill. There are definitely people within the data science realm who are never going to be that person. They like to stay in the data. They like to stay technically savvy. And you have your data, your engineer tracks to sort of staff personnel. But for the people who want to go through the management and help actually do a lot of the product management, not just the personnel management, but the product management, it becomes that much easier for a project. So it's teaching them from the point that they get out of that junior level. I like to have them present their work to people above me, even as high as you can go. I'm more than happy to coach them, whether it be on presentation or the actual talk that they're giving, making sure they know what level that they're at and being there for them even during those first presentations that if they get flustered, they have somebody who they know that they can lean on. But again, it's development. It's actually one of the things I actually look for. It's one of the first questions I ask when I'm interviewing somebody, is to explain a problem to me in a way that anybody, say a middle schooler or a high schooler, would understand. And if they can't do that, or they're not interested in learning that, then there's really no reason to move forward.
And I guess, how do you yourself, looking at data, can effectively communicate it to somebody who can understand it, that it is in middle school, because it is a real thing even in marketing. I know that, you have to communicate your service or whatever you're selling or whatever your company is trying to do into simple English that anybody can understand.
I usually refer everything back to, call it lift, when it comes to data science work. It's one of the beauty of working with numbers, is we can always use those numbers to quantify what we do and why it's better. You should be able to tell anybody, middle schooler, high schooler, anybody at the company you're working at, to say, I'm working on this project. They go, oh, that's sort of neat. You give them a 2-minute description. It's like, well, what's going to happen? You say, well, we're going to try and deploy it or put out this algorithm, metric, new dashboard, and we expect it to show something or create some sort of lift, whether it be a savings on the bottom line, improvements in the top line, better retention, better acquisition, you name it. But you should have 2 or 3 metrics that you say, this is what this piece of technology will drive, and people can understand, people can grasp that. And it's the same with anything else. With a front end system, you're not just going to say, build me a front end, a new user interface. It's like, no, there's a discussion that goes along. There's understanding of what's driving it. It's the same way with data science. It's a black magic. I fully appreciate that. But you need to have confidence. Your stakeholders, product managers you might be working with as well, need to have confidence in what you're doing, and repeated, once you have repeated successes, then they'll be like, okay, that's great, let's move forward. And there's more trust built up and less discussion is needed.
And I guess, how do you, when you have a team and you have the stakeholders, obviously, you have to produce results and so forth. How do you keep your team motivated and inspired as a leader to kind of keep moving forward and making them feel like they really are a part of the business and really moving the needle?
Part of it is that product understanding. Much like any good developer, you need to understand why you're building something. And it's the same with a data science or a data engineer or an analyst. You need to understand the business value of what you're driving and why you're doing it. It's just like, well, I see a spec I've written here, it's been written here, I'm going to meet the spec. There's no engagement. That's how sort of boredom or apathy rolls in. And you run into real problems then, because you're just looking at a paper. You're not interacting with people, seeing what they really want out of it. This is why I like to engage anybody within my team above the junior level with stakeholders. So if they get a real understanding, they can start being part of the dialogue. They can see where the work is going. And if problems arise, they can hear it directly from the stakeholders and they can work on it themselves.
I definitely agree with that. It's a good exercise. I'm going to try it myself. But so I guess, to kind of finish this off, what is your favorite thing about data science? And what would be your advice to somebody trying to climb up the ladder and someday maybe be in your position that you're in right now?
So I've always had at least for myself, I've always asked the question, why? Why does something work? I did my PhD in physics because I wanted to know how the universe worked. And I quickly realized as I was finishing out, there are lots of interesting questions out there besides the, call it STEM world. And so I got sucked into, I was at Stanford doing my research. So of course I get sucked into Silicon Valley. And I've been able to answer all sorts of interesting questions there. How do people approach food? What's popular, what's not, what changes seasonality? It's always having those sorts of questions in your head that you're trying to answer, and then finding a position that will help you answer those will really drive you and keep you engaged on an individual level. As for the question on what skills, whether they be hard or soft skills for anybody, was a data scientist. For the beginning data scientist, it has to be SQL. You need to know how to get your own data out and be able to look and understand, along with a basic understanding of statistics. You need to know that if you're flipping a coin so many times or throwing dice, what are these probabilities? Because this is the everyday life of understanding if a data scientist result or a generated result makes sense. As people get older, I look for production level programming, I guess is the best way. Very frequently, the stuff that we write just gets rolled out. If it's inefficient, if it's wrong, if it's buggy, that's going to cause lots of problems. You need to have sort of production level coding abilities. Not everybody can reach that, but it's one of the places I suggest. And I guess the next level is then, I guess the best way to put it is product management.
Mm-hmm.
It's hard to find good data science product managers or any good data product managers. So data scientists very frequently take on the role themselves. So learning how to communicate, learning how to present, not just your final results, but how to have those interactions with your stakeholders to find out what they really want is important. And these are sort of the biggest things that I talk to my team in development about.
Thank you for sharing that with us. And for our viewers, what is the best way to connect with you? Is it LinkedIn, or how do you prefer, I guess?
LinkedIn is the best way, and you can link up with me there, or my email address is just my name, Andrew Eichenbaum @gmail.com. Feel free to drop me a note. And hopefully it won't get put into the spam box with the random other things that get put there that I need to move back.
Yeah, definitely. Also, we'll be attaching a link to your LinkedIn profile right underneath this video. So anybody who would like to connect with Andrew, you can go ahead and just click over to his profile and go ahead and connect with him. And thank you so much, Andrew, for your time. And thank you for coming to the tech show. We're really thankful to have you. And it was a really nice conversation.
Thank you. My pleasure.